I have several concluding remarks to make, which are strictly my own opinions. If you want the science, look at the articles which I've already cited. Not only the original Livestock and Climate Change, but also the pro and con in animal feed science and technology. But here are my opinions. Point number one, the FAO now openly supports the meat industry and the dairy industry. They're in a partnership with them, so it's completely out in the open at this point. And I think I can see the USDA and the FAO as being essentially the same kinds of organizations. They're both generally, basically, they're on the right path, but they are obviously subject to political pressures, as they have been in the case of nutrition, in the case of the USDA, and on climate science in the case of the FAO. When the USDA starts talking about stuff that's politically sensitive, like dietary guidelines for Americans, watch out. The way that the USDA has distorted nutrition science over the past 40 or 50 years at least is fairly well documented at this point. The same thing applies to the FAO and climate science. The FAO is now openly in partnership with the meat and dairy industries. What they're doing is political propaganda on behalf of the livestock industry. Point number two. Livestock and climate change represents the minimum estimate of greenhouse gas emissions from livestock agriculture. The real total is probably higher than that. For example, ending livestock agriculture would probably result in sequestering at least 2 or 3 gigatons of CO2 equivalents each year over what Goodland and Anhang estimated in Livestock and Climate Change. And Goodland and Anhang actually admitted that this figure that they came up with for land use wasn't the ideal figure, it was just the best they could come up with at the time. Furthermore, if we accepted a 10-year time frame for methane instead of the 20-year time frame that Goodland and Anhang suggested, that we would probably add another 2.5 gigatons of CO2 equivalents to the total for livestock agriculture. And at this point, we should accept a 10-year time frame. A 10-year time frame would actually be better because we don't have that much time left before the climate is pushed past critical tipping points and we get into a more or less permanently hotter world. Plus, livestock are continually increasing. There are more livestock today than there were in 2009, 2006, or 2002. Livestock have been continually increasing. This is part of the so-called livestock revolution, which is now being openly promoted by the FAO. I wouldn't be surprised if a truly objective, unbiased accounting of livestock agriculture would reveal that it was more than 32 gigatons of CO2 equivalents. It was probably more like 40 gigatons of CO2 equivalents by today, perhaps more. So the important point here is that Goodland and Anhang did not make some sort of wild speculative estimate about what livestock agriculture could be responsible for. They are actually taking a fairly conservative approach. This represents a minimum. Point number 3. Don't get distracted by the 51% figure. Yeah, I know. Goodland and Anhang said that livestock agriculture accounted for 51%, at least 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And that was probably correct in 2009. But there's something else which also is true about this report, which most people don't even notice. And that is that we've also increased the total amount of greenhouse gases attributable to anything. The total amount of human-caused greenhouse gas emissions has now been increased by about 50%. So, bottom line, the human contribution to global warming is a lot worse than we thought it was. And this should be a cause for alarm among climate scientists just as much as the concern about livestock agriculture. Oh yes, we have to do something about livestock agriculture too. Every now and then you'll see a report like this, which came out in 2016. Scientists caught off guard by record temperatures linked to climate change. And the article goes on to describe how the scientists were really puzzled by these things that were just not expected. They thought, this is getting worse a lot faster than we thought it would. Well, maybe the reason that global warming is worse than we thought it would be is because we haven't accounted for livestock agriculture yet. If you just take these off the books, then of course it's going to be puzzling. There's another reason not to get distracted by the 51% figure. It's not just livestock that have been increasing in the over a decade period since Livestock and Climate Change came out. We've seen a huge upsurge in fracking. Fracking is one of the biggest sources of energy production in the United States today. And with fracking, there's been an increase in methane. And some of this is going to be, in fact, probably most of it, is going to be attributable to non-agricultural energy use. So there may be other additions to global warming that we're not even aware of right now. So we don't want to get distracted by 51%. It may not be 51% today. It may be more, it may be less. Percentages don't cause global warming. Greenhouse gas emissions cause global warming. Our objective is not to change the percentage, it's to get rid of greenhouse gas emissions. And the easiest way to do that is by reducing or eliminating livestock agriculture. In conclusion, I don't think there's any real question that livestock agriculture is a key cause of global warming, and it's almost entirely unnoticed by most policymakers and even many scientists. Livestock agriculture has devastated the planet, and there's no way that we can really deal with global warming without dealing with livestock agriculture.